we're back, and today we've got a bit more to do on this Bugatti, which is clearly in half. We did the impossible, but now it's going to get a lot harder because everything from now on is building the car and fixing it.
A $6 million Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, officially totaled.
This is the Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport. One of the most expensive Bugattis ever made.
Declared beyond saving by the very factory that built it. But when Mat Armstrong bought the wreck and began documenting the rebuild, the story took a turn nobody expected. Hidden components, a manufacturer-imposed parts ban, and a battle over who truly controls a car after it is sold transformed one salvage project into a global controversy. What started as an attempt to save one hypercar ended up raising questions about ownership, repair rights, and corporate power that the entire industry is still answering. So why did one man's garage project change the law in Europe? Let us get into it. The Bugatti that refused to die. There is a specific kind of silence that follows a catastrophic crash. The kind where insurance adjusters start talking in millions and experts fly in from other countries just to shake their heads. That was the exact silence surrounding a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport sitting in Miami, Florida in the autumn of 2025. The car had been owned by content creator Alex Gonzalez, known online as Falixkit, and it had suffered the kind of accident that even veteran mechanics describe in hushed tones.
If you guys don't know, yes, the Bugatti has been crashed. I'm going to try and disclose as much information as I can.
The front end had absorbed a massive impact. The airbags had fired. The carbon fiber monocoque, the very spine of the car, the structural backbone that everything else hangs from, had taken damage at a level that made engineers genuinely uncomfortable. The gearbox housing had shattered, and sitting beneath all of that wreckage was one of the most complex powertrains ever fitted to a road-going vehicle. Bugatti's response was swift and institutional. They flew an expert from Molsheim, their factory in France, directly to Miami to assess the situation. His verdict was merciless. The car was officially written off. It received a salvage title, and it was sent to Copart, the auction platform where totaled vehicles go, to find whatever comes next. The factory repair quote that Bugatti had issued before walking away? $1.7 million. On a car that had originally sold for $6 million. That single number tells you everything about the world these machines inhabit. When the cost of repairing something approaches a third of what it originally cost to purchase, most rational people stop asking questions and move on. And that is exactly what Bugatti expected everyone to do. But not everyone who looked at that wrecked Chiron Pur Sport saw a tragedy. Mat Armstrong, a British mechanic and YouTuber who had spent years building an audience by doing the impossible with written-off luxury cars, saw something else entirely. He saw a project. He saw the 8-liter, quad-turbocharged W16 engine still sitting in that battered carbon shell.
The Chiron's quad-turbo W16. Now the other thing with this is it's going to be a plug-in hybrid.
He saw 60 of the most exclusive machines ever built reduced to one, sitting at auction, available to anyone willing to take a risk that the factory had decided was not worth taking. And he felt that particular pull that every serious mechanic recognizes, the deep, stubborn, slightly irrational conviction that something important can still be saved. So he bought it. And from the moment that salvage title transferred into his name, the story stopped being about a wrecked car and became something far larger. The Chiron Pur Sport is not simply another Bugatti, within a range already defined by outrageous performance and prices that make financial advisors nervous. The Pur Sport is the focused variant. The one built for drivers who find the standard Chiron marginally too comfortable, marginally too easy. Only 60 were ever produced. Each one is hand-assembled in Molsheim over the course of several months, with individual craftsmen assigned to specific components that no automated production line would ever be trusted to touch. It is, in the truest sense, a handmade object, which makes the idea of rebuilding one in a British garage not just ambitious, but practically heretical by the standards of the brand that created it. Bugatti saw it that way. Armstrong, as would become abundantly clear, was not particularly interested in Bugatti's opinion. What followed those first weeks of ownership was a teardown, documented in extraordinary detail, the kind of transparency that hypercar manufacturers are simply not accustomed to facing. Every panel that came off was filmed. Every component that was assessed was described. Every damaged part was catalogued and shared with an audience that grew larger with each upload. And somewhere in the middle of all that meticulous documentation, Armstrong started finding things that nobody at Bugatti had ever expected anyone outside of Molsheim to examine this closely. Things that raised serious questions. Things that a brand charging $6 million a unit had every commercial reason to hope would remain invisible forever. What they found inside the Chiron, there is a story that circulates in the automotive world, part legend, part verified history, about the moment engineers from rival manufacturers first got their hands on a disassembled Bugatti Veyron in the mid-2000s. What reportedly shocked them most was not the engineering brilliance. It was the familiarity. Because underneath the bespoke carbon fiber panels and the hand-stitched leather interior and the one-of-a-kind engine architecture, certain components carried the unmistakable signature of the Volkswagen Group. The German industrial giant that had purchased the Bugatti name in 1998 and resurrected it from obscurity, shared electronics, familiar sensor clusters, components that, stripped of their context, would not have looked entirely out of place in a vehicle selling for a fraction of the price. That story never fully disappeared. It lived in enthusiast forums and workshop conversations, quietly acknowledged, never officially confirmed. Mat Armstrong's teardown of the Chiron Pur Sport brought that story back into the open.
Another swift update on the Chiron. This was the rear quarter. This was the original colour, this dark blue.
With a force that no press release could have generated. As his team stripped the car to its bones, working methodically through the damage, cataloging everything with the precision that filming for a global audience demands. They began encountering components that bore Volkswagen Group markings. Parts that in isolation would not have seemed remarkable. Parts that existed in modified form across vehicles produced by the same parent company at drastically different price points. Parts that Bugatti had never publicly discussed, never voluntarily acknowledged, and, when the subject began trending across automotive media, appeared distinctly uncomfortable having highlighted. It is essential to understand exactly what this discovery meant, and equally important to understand what it did not mean. It did not mean that a Bugatti Chiron was a Volkswagen Golf in an expensive suit. The engineering gulf between those two vehicles is so vast that framing it in those terms would be genuinely misleading. What it meant was something more precise, and, in certain respects, more damaging to the mythology that ultra-luxury brands depend upon. It meant that even at the absolute ceiling of production car pricing, even where the marketing insists on total, uncompromising exclusivity, manufacturers operate within supply chains and component-sharing architectures that connect different price points in ways their communications teams would prefer remained invisible. The curtain, pulled back even slightly, revealed a more complicated picture than the brochure suggested. Why does that complication matter so much? Because the entire justification for a $6 million price tag, beyond the performance, beyond the rarity, beyond the extraordinary assembly process, rests on the promise that every atom of the car exists in a universe entirely separate from ordinary manufacturing, that nothing inside it has ever shared a parts number, a supplier relationship, or a production process with something a regular person could encounter. When that promise gets complicated, even in ways that have perfectly defensible engineering explanations, even in ways that informed buyers might accept without issue, it destabilizes the brand narrative in ways that are very difficult to recover from. And Bugatti's response to the destabilization that Armstrong's camera had caused was not to engage with it.
You can't just do that in a garage.
But despite that, in the last video, we managed to separate the rear half of the car away from the front half.
It was to shut the camera down. They locked the car, not with a physical mechanism, not a chain or a clamp, but in a way that was, practically speaking, far more absolute. Bugatti reached into their global dealership database and locked the vehicle identification number of Armstrong's Chiron Pur Sport, blacklisting it so thoroughly that not a single authorized dealer anywhere on Earth would supply so much as one component to support the rebuild. One database entry, and overnight, a man who had legally purchased a salvage vehicle found himself locked out of every official supply channel the manufacturer operated. The message required no words. Stop filming, stop digging, stop showing people what you found. Bugatti hits back. Mat Armstrong is not the kind of chief executive who waits quietly when he believes something needs addressing. The Croatian entrepreneur who built his own electric hypercar company from nothing, merged it with Bugatti in 2021, and navigated a complex ownership restructuring that drew in HOF Capital as a major stakeholder in April 2026. This is not a man who delegates controversy to a communications department and hopes it fades. He is publicly visible, genuinely engaged with his industry, and willing to step into arguments that most executives at his level would carefully avoid. So when the Mat Armstrong saga began generating the kind of traffic that automotive media had not seen in years, Rimac did something that almost no chief executive of an ultra-luxury brand would consider. He went on social media and addressed it himself. His argument was, on its surface, entirely coherent. A Bugatti Chiron is a machine of such staggering complexity, so precisely calibrated, so deeply interdependent in its engineering, that independent repairs on structural components, like the carbon fiber monocoque and the shattered gearbox housing, introduced genuine safety risks that no responsible manufacturer could endorse. He posted detailed video content showing the intricacy of Bugatti's internal components, making the case visually for just how far beyond ordinary automotive engineering these machines operate. He stated directly that the parts prices being quoted in videos circulating online were not accurate, that the figures being presented as evidence of Bugatti's excessive control were themselves inflated and misleading. And he made his position on the resolution unmistakably clear. The car was welcome in Molsheim. The factory would assess it. That was the proper path. He also described something that revealed a great deal about the gap between what was actually happening and what the internet had turned it into. His relationship with Armstrong, Rimac explained in subsequent interviews, was not the corporate war that comment sections and competing YouTube channels had constructed. He compared the dynamic, with a self-awareness that is genuinely rare in executive communication, to the way the world frames Messi and Ronaldo, two professionals who respect each other, operating in the same space, while the audience builds a rivalry narrative that neither of them fully recognizes. Cordial between the two men involved, unrecognizable by the time it reached the people watching. But the factory-only repair position carried implications that extended well beyond the specific case of one salvage Chiron. Bugatti's enforcement of that position, through the VIN lock mechanism, meant that the manufacturer retained effective control over every vehicle they had ever produced, regardless of who currently held legal title to it. It did not matter that Armstrong had paid for the car. It did not matter that it carried a salvage title and had been written off by the original insurer. Bugatti could, with a single administrative action, make that car unrepairable through any legitimate channel worldwide. The owner of the vehicle had less practical power over it than the company that had manufactured it years earlier and been paid in full. That asymmetry, made visible for the first time at this scale, was something the automotive industry had very much preferred to keep theoretical. Who truly owns a car when its manufacturer can revoke its access to the global parts network from an office in France? What does legal ownership mean when the company that built your vehicle retains practical veto power over its future? These questions resonated far beyond car enthusiasts. They touched property rights, consumer protection law, and a long-running regulatory debate that had been simmering across multiple industries for a decade. Armstrong had not set out to make that argument. He had set out to fix a car.
I have fixed whatever position you may like, and is solid.
But sometimes the most effective advocacy is simply refusing to stop doing what you have every right to do, and letting the world watch what happens when someone tries to stop you. A mechanical rebuttal. There is a specific quality of stubbornness that separates the people who change things from the people who simply complain about them. It is not the stubbornness of someone who refuses to see reality clearly. It is the stubbornness of someone who sees reality completely, understands every obstacle in front of them, understands what they are up against, and decides that the principle at stake is worth the effort anyway. Mat Armstrong had that quality in abundance. When Bugatti locked the VIN and every official supply route closed simultaneously, he did not file a complaint and wait. He looked at what he still had, his skills, his workshop, his team, his camera, and he started engineering his way around the wall that had been built in front of him. The approach he landed on was, in retrospect, the only approach that could have worked at the level of precision a Bugatti demands. Three-dimensional scanning, the same foundational technology used by aerospace engineers and motorsport teams to reverse engineer components for, which no manufacturer drawings exist, allowed Armstrong's team to create exact digital models of the parts they needed. From those digital models, CNC machining could produce physical components to tolerances that matched the originals. The process demanded patience, expertise, and an investment of time and money that would have stopped most people before it started. It also demanded the kind of workshop capability that most independent mechanics simply do not have access to. Armstrong had built that capability deliberately over years of working on exactly this category of vehicle. Rimac had addressed the idea of producing replacement parts outside the factory in his social media response, and his concerns about certain manufacturing approaches were not without foundation. The distinction between three-dimensional printing and precision CNC machining matters enormously in structural engineering terms. A printed polymer, bracket, and a machined billet aluminium component are not in the same conversation when it comes to the loads a Bugatti drivetrain generates. Armstrong was clear that his team was working with the latter approach, the one that professional engineers actually use when they need to recreate safety-critical components without original specifications. The serious solution, not the shortcut. The public response as this phase of the project unfolded was unlike anything the automotive corner of YouTube had previously generated. The audience, already enormous after months of following the VIN lock saga, grew further and shifted in character. Engineers commented with technical analysis. Independent mechanics posted supporting breakdowns of the machining process. Automotive journalists spent careers covering new model launches found themselves writing instead about a salvage rebuild in a British workshop, trying to explain to readers who had never heard of Mat Armstrong why this story had consumed their entire industry. And through all of it, Armstrong kept filming. The same transparency that had triggered Bugatti's response in the first place was the engine driving everything that followed. The moment the engine fired, the moment that rebuilt Chiron Pur Sport came back to life after months of work that the factory had declared impossible outside of their own facility, it landed on the internet with the weight of a verdict. Every note of that quad-turbocharged W16 was a mechanical rebuttal to every institutional obstacle that had been placed between a man and the machine he legally owned. Bugatti had said it could not be done. A mechanic in Britain had done it, documented every step, and shared the entire process with an audience of millions. The car ran, and the argument that only Molsheim could fix a Bugatti ran out of road at exactly the same moment. From garage project to legal precedent, legislation does not move quickly. The European Union's regulatory machinery, with its member states, its industry consultation processes, its lobbying ecosystem, and its deliberate pace of change, is not designed to respond to individual controversies. It is designed to respond to sustained, documented patterns of harm that eventually accumulate enough evidence and enough public pressure to force action. Which makes the speed and clarity of what followed the Mat Armstrong saga genuinely remarkable. Because the attention that the VIN lock controversy generated did not dissipate when the car started running. it fed directly into a debate that the automotive industry had been managing and successfully delaying for years. The right to repair movement had been building pressure across multiple sectors simultaneously. Consumer electronics, where manufacturer restrictions on independent repair had created entire shadow economies in phone and laptop servicing. Agricultural equipment, where farmers found themselves legally prohibited from fixing the tractors sitting idle in their own fields. Medical devices, software systems, and automobiles, where the combination of software-controlled diagnostics, VIN-based parts restrictions, and proprietary repair protocols had quietly shifted enormous amounts of post-sale revenue back toward manufacturer-controlled service networks. The arguments in favor of change were well established. The economic evidence of consumer harm was well documented. What the movement had consistently struggled to find was a story that the general public would actually follow. Mat Armstrong's Chiron Pur Sport became that story. Not because it involved the most money or the most complex legal arguments or the most sophisticated engineering challenge, though it involved all of those things, but because it was specific, visible, and impossible to look away from. A real person, a real car, a real company, making a real decision to lock that person out of his own property using a database entry. Millions of people watched it happen in real time, formed opinions about it, argued about it in comment sections, and, critically, understood intuitively that the principle at stake was not limited to $6 million hypercars. If a manufacturer could do this to a Bugatti owner, the same mechanisms existed to do it to anyone who owned a vehicle complex enough to depend on manufacturer-controlled parts channels. The European Union ruling arrived with a directness that caught even advocates by surprise. Bugatti's factory-only repair and service model
in 1998, and they've been building the Bugattis here since then, the Veyron model, the Chiron.
The policy framework that had allowed the VIN blacklist and the global parts lockout would be illegal under European Union Consumer Protection Regulation from July 2026. The right to repair, the right to independent parts sourcing, the right to choose your own mechanic without the manufacturer retaining override power through a software system. These protections, already standard in other product categories, would now apply to automobiles across the board, including vehicles in categories that had never previously been subject to such requirements. The implications run far beyond Bugatti's Molsheim factory. Every manufacturer operating in European markets that has used VIN-based restrictions, proprietary diagnostic gatekeeping, or software-controlled parts systems to channel post-sale business back toward authorized networks will need to fundamentally reconsider how those systems operate. Independent workshops gain leverage they have been denied for years. Enthusiasts and restorers gain access they have been locked out of. And at the exact center of all of it, not by design, not by political calculation, but by sheer refusal to stop doing what he had every right to do, stands a British mechanic who bought a wrecked car at a salvage auction and filmed everything that happened next. Mat Armstrong did not set out to change European law. He set out to fix a Bugatti. But sometimes the most consequential act is simply the one that everyone in power believed you would not have the nerve to finish. So let us bring it all together. One wrecked hypercar. One mechanic who refused to walk away. Volkswagen parts inside a $6 million machine. A VIN locked by a factory in France. A CEO who went public to fight back. Parts fabricated from scratch when every official door closed. An engine that started against all odds. And a European Union ruling that changed the rules for every car owner on the continent. One camera, one principle, one refusal to stop. Was Bugatti right? Or did they bring all of this on themselves? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit like if this hit different. Subscribe, the next one goes even deeper.